Hey YouTube, what's up? Welcome to a new video. Today we are going to be talking all about how to turn your foundation from drab to fab. I feel like foundation is one of those things that if you're wearing any makeup at all, most people are putting a little bit of foundation on, and I see people make a ton of different mistakes with it. So as we go through this video, I'm going to talk about the proper ways to apply your foundation, the ways that you can make your foundation look its best, and common mistakes to avoid. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up so that more people can see it too. And leave me a comment down below so I know you were here. I'm also gonna list the products that I talk about in this video down in the description box below. All right, so we're gonna talk about 6 different things you can do to improve your foundation today. Step number 1, prepping and priming your skin. This is so important, you guys. Your foundation is only gonna look as good as the skin that's underneath it. It is so important to take good care of your skin. Make sure you have a good skincare routine in place and that you're following it every day. And the most important parts of that skincare routine are going to be number 1, cleansing your skin, and number 2, moisturizing your skin. Always start your foundation with fresh, clean skin that you have just washed. If I'm doing my own makeup, I will always wash my face in the bathroom with a gentle hydrating cleanser before I start doing my makeup. If I am doing makeup at the counter, I will always use Charlotte's Multi-Miracle Glow Cleansing Balm on clients to hydrate their skin before we start their makeup. And if I am doing a freelance makeup application, I always bring with me a jar of micellar water and I will cleanse people's skin that way. I have found that it makes a huge difference in the final look of the application when you start with cleansed skin. So a really important part of prepping and priming your skin is making sure that you are starting your work on clean skin. The second part of prepping and priming your skin is to hydrate. Hydrate. You want to use a really good moisturizer that's going to leave the skin feeling hydrated. I personally don't like moisturizers that sink into the skin right away. I use moisturizer as my primer. So I want the foundation to be able to go really nice and smooth over top of my skin, and having a nice hydrating moisturizer underneath is gonna help with that initial application. It's also gonna keep your foundation looking fresh throughout the day. So if you have problems with your foundation drying down, looking cakey, clinging onto dry patches throughout the day, something that's really gonna help you is picking up a super hydrating moisturizer that's gonna keep that foundation looking fresh as you go throughout the day. You guys know I am so in love with Charlotte Tilbury's Magic Cream. This is a moisturizer and a primer together in one. This is the best product that I have found to hydrate the skin before going in with makeup. It is a beautiful moisturizer that makes the skin feel so calm and hydrated, and it really does give that beautiful base to put foundation on top of. So if you're looking for a good moisture, I definitely recommend this one. Check out the link for it down below. I'm just gonna touch on primers really quickly while we're talking about prepping and priming the skin for foundation. I typically don't use a primer, and I think that most people don't really need them unless you're looking for a specific result. Sometimes I'll prime my skin with my Charlotte Tilbury Hollywood Flawless Filter. This is a primer that really makes the skin look really smooth and glowy. So that's what I mean by looking for a specific result. If you have dry skin and you have a good moisturizer and you feel like you need extra hydration, then use a hydrating primer. If you have large pores that foundation sinks into, then you're gonna wanna use a silicone-based primer that's really gonna fill in those pores. I don't really like mattifying primers, but I do have some friends that really swear by them. So if you're having trouble with your makeup looking too greasy and oily throughout the day, maybe try a mattifying primer. But for me, I typically feel that the Magic Cream does a good enough job on its own priming my skin, and it does everything that I need it to. So I definitely don't think primers are 100% necessary, but they're nice to have if you're looking to achieve a certain result from them. The number 2 way to improve the look of your foundation is to make sure that your foundation is color matched correctly to your skin. When you're color matching your foundation, you guys, you want to be matching your foundation to the color of your neck or chest. So if your neck is lighter than your chest, match to your chest. A lot of people match their foundation to the color on their face, and that doesn't really work. A lot of us wear SPF on our faces every day. We're always cleansing our skin using exfoliators, so our face is typically gonna be a lot lighter than the rest of our bodies. And if you're matching your foundation to your face, your foundation is gonna match the skin on your face, but it's not gonna match the rest of the skin on your body, and so it's gonna look unnatural. What you wanna do is be matching your foundation to your body so that everything looks seamless. So So what I always like to do, and the way that I was taught to color match, is to take the 3 different shades of foundation that you think are going to be the closest to you, do 3 different swatches on your neck, let it sit there for a minute in case the foundation dries down a different color or maybe oxidizes a little bit, and then you can go ahead and compare those 1, 2, 3. You're looking for the proper undertone, so which undertone is going to match you best, as well as proper shade. Sometimes I'll try like a light with a yellow undertone, a light with a peach undertone, a light with a pink undertone. And I'll notice that the light with the yellow undertone matches somebody the best, but the shade isn't quite perfect. It could be a little lighter or a little darker. So I'll go in that foundation shade range and I'll look for a foundation that has a yellow tone but is either lighter or darker, depending on what I think they might need, and I'll swatch that next to my original swatch, and then I'll choose between those 2 foundations in order to get the correct color match. So you're looking for shade and undertone when you're color matching foundation. If you do not know these things about yourself, have someone help you. I always recommend going to a counter if there's a specific foundation that you like. For example, you wanted a Charlotte Tilbury foundation, you wanted an Estee Lauder foundation, you wanted a Tom Ford foundation. I recommend going to a department store and going to a counter. The reason I say that is because the people who are working at those counters work with those foundations in and out every single day. They are gonna be experts in the shade range. They're gonna know just from looking at you what color of foundation you're gonna be. If you go to a drugstore or to Sephora, the people who work there are dealing with tons of different kinds of foundation. They're not gonna know the shade ranges as well as people who work at specific counters. So if you are struggling with a color match, I definitely recommend actually going into a counter as opposed to a drugstore or a Sephora. Obviously, people who work at Sephora or who work at drugstores can be great at color matching for foundation as well, but the real experts are going to be the people who actually work for that specific brand. All right, guys, so let's talk about how to apply your foundation. The number 3 tip that I have for you is to really buff and press that foundation into your skin. So I like to apply foundation in 2 different ways. Sometimes I like to use a sponge, sometimes I like to use a brush. So I show you both different ways in this video. What I always like to do is put foundation onto the back of my hand to start. I'm usually mixing colors. I typically have a foundation in a lighter shade and a darker shade, and then I can wear the darkest shade when I'm my most tan, wear the lightest shade when I'm my most pale, and then when I'm in between those 2 different skin tones, I just mix and match and kind of create my custom shade. So I'll make my little cocktail on the back of my hand. When I'm using a sponge, I will take my finger, dip it into the foundation on the back of my hand, and disperse it onto my face. Then I'll take my damp sponge. I prefer to use a beauty blender over the sort of third-party knockoff versions of sponges. I do feel like the beauty blender really does have a special application. People ask me a lot if they should spend the money on a beauty blender or just buy one of the cheaper knockoff versions, and in my opinion, it is worth spending the extra money on the beauty blender. So anyways, once I have that foundation spread out onto my face, I will take my beauty blender and I will really press that product into the skin. I'll go over it multiple times and make sure that that foundation is really pushed right into the skin. I don't want it to be sitting on top. When I'm using a brush, what I like to do is really submerge my brush, completely cover it in foundation on the back of my hand before I go in with it on my skin. You can see in the clips here, I'm really doing nice circular buffing motions and stippling, so pressing the product into the skin with the brush, really making sure that I am buffing that product right into the skin. This is where your skincare can be really important as well, because if you have dry skin and you're not exfoliating properly, when you're doing this buffing motion, sometimes you can pick up a lot of dead skin, and then you get those little flakes of dead skin picking up off of your face as you're buffing in your foundation. The best way to avoid that is to be regularly exfoliating your skin, and again, to make sure that you've properly prepped your skin with a good moisturizer. The brush that I've been loving lately is this one from Charlotte Tilbury. It is the Magic Complexion Brush. I also really like, for a more affordable option, this one right here from Real Techniques. This is the Expert Face Brush. It's really similar to the Charlotte Tilbury one. The bristles are a little bit shorter, but both work really well for buffing that product into the skin and really pressing it in there. Another brush that I really like using for this is the Charlotte Tilbury Hollywood Complexion Brush. I don't love this one on myself as much just because the head is a little bit smaller, so it just takes a little bit longer, but I really like using this brush on clients to apply foundation on clients. So this guy is really nice. It also has this side right here, which is good for patting in concealer underneath the eye. So that's a good option for a brush as well. This Charlotte Tilbury brush is a little bit more affordable than this one, and it does have the double sides. So check this one out too if you are looking for a good buffing style brush for your makeup. All right guys, tip number 4. This is gonna help you avoid having really heavy, cakey looking makeup. Whew, it's getting hot in here. The best way to avoid your makeup looking heavy and cakey is to apply it in this way. So what I like to do is apply a light layer of foundation all over the skin. Depending on the foundation that you're using, when I say a light layer, I typically mean about 1 pump of foundation. So I'll do a light layer of foundation all over the skin, and then any areas that need a little bit of extra coverage, I'll go in with a little bit more foundation and apply a little bit more just to the areas where I feel I need that extra coverage. So if I have some acne scarring poking through, if I have a little bit of a breakout happening, if there's a little bit of redness poking through, I'll just take a little bit more of a foundation on my finger, applied in that area, and then I'll either tap that in with my finger or I'll tap it in with my beauty blender. That way I'm adding extra coverage to the areas where I feel I need it, but I don't have a heavy layer of foundation all over my skin, and the areas where my skin doesn't need as much foundation are not going to feel heavy or cakey or like they have too much coverage that they don't need. This is a way that you can use a light coverage or a medium coverage foundation and make it more medium to full coverage just by building it up in the areas where you need it, as opposed to taking a super full coverage foundation and covering it all over your skin and making your skin feel really heavy and cakey and like you're wearing too much foundation. Tip number 5 is setting your foundation. Before I worked for Charlotte Tilbury, I did what I think most people do with their setting powders, and I would take a big brush like this, a big fluffy brush, dip it into my powder, and then cover my entire face with powder. After working for Charlotte Tilbury, I learned a much better way to apply powder to the skin. Charlotte uses this brush right here. This is the Powder and Sculpt brush from Charlotte Tilbury. I do use this one on clients, of course, especially when I'm at the counter. I prefer this one from Sigma, which you can see is a really similar shape. It's just a little bit fluffier. This is the F35 from Sigma. So this is the one I prefer to use on myself at home. With powder, you want to use as little powder as possible. So that's going to be a different amount of powder for different people depending on your skin type and depending on the final look that you want to achieve with your makeup. I'm always looking for really hydrated, glowy looking skin, so I want to use a little bit of powder in just the areas where I need it. So the areas that I use powder are going to be on top of my concealer. So any of the areas where I put concealer, sometimes I'll use concealer to cover a blemish or something like that, and then I'll use a little bit of powder on that area. But any area where I put concealer, I use powder, and I put it through my T-zone as well because I do typically tend to get oily through my T-zone throughout the day. What you want to do with your powder, dip your brush into your powder, whether you're using a pressed powder or a loose powder, and then you want to tap off any excess. So you only have a small amount of powder on your brush. Then you're going to want to go ahead and press that powder into the skin. On days where I need my makeup to be very long wearing, I will powder my entire face, but again, I don't use a big brush like this. I will still use this small little brush because it's not picking up too much product, and I will really lightly buff a small layer of powder all over my skin, and that helps your makeup to last longer throughout the day. If you have dry skin, you 100% do not need to do that. If you have dry skin, only powder the area where you put concealer, and I'm saying use the tiniest little bit of powder. My favorite powder is the Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush Flawless Finishing Powder. A common complaint that I have been hearing about that powder recently is that people say it's not worth the money because it's expensive and you're hitting pan on it too quickly, meaning you're running through the powder more quickly than with other powders that you've purchased before in the past. I can guarantee the reason that's happening is because you're taking a giant brush and you're using too much powder. So just to reiterate, you want to use a small brush, tapered is helpful, and you only want to use a tiny little bit of powder in the areas where you need it. All right guys, so the sixth and final tip that I have for you today to make your foundation absolutely flawless is to set it with setting spray. My favorite setting spray is the Urban Decay All Nighter Setting Spray. I 100% notice a difference in this setting spray in terms of the longevity of my makeup. If I spray this on my makeup in the morning, I notice a huge difference with how long my makeup lasts throughout the day as opposed to mornings where I forget to. I'm not stingy with my setting spray. I really load up my face with it, and then after letting it dry for a few seconds, I will go in with my damp beauty blender and just really lightly, super lightly so as not to disturb anything, go over top and just really press that setting spray into my skin. Setting spray is gonna do a couple of things for you. If it is a long wear setting spray, it is going to help to maintain the wear of your makeup. It's also going to help really absorb any extra powder that's sitting on top of your skin. So that powder that we've put on top of our concealer and through our T-zone, maybe your powder bronzer and blush, your powder highlighter, it's really gonna help that just soak into the skin and look less powdery on top of your face. There are also specific setting sprays that you can use similar to primers for different results. So there are super glowy setting sprays. There's the Tatcha one from Glam Glow, one from ColourPop. Those setting sprays are not designed to extend the wear of your makeup, but to make your skin look extra glowy and dewy and fresh. So those are really good for if you have dry skin. There are setting sprays like the one I use, which are really gonna help to extend the wear of your makeup. There are mattifying setting sprays. So depending on your skin type and the result that you're looking for from your setting spray, there are different types of ones that you can pick up, but in the end, they are all going to improve the look of your makeup. I definitely recommend the Urban Decay one. I really love it, and I've been using it for years and years, and I've gone through tons of them. And yeah, like I said, I can speak from experience that it really does help the long wear of your makeup. All right guys, so those are my 6 tips for improving the look of your foundation today. Maybe you guys are already using some of these techniques and I've given you a couple new things to incorporate into your routine, or maybe you are not doing any of these things, and I would recommend getting onto all of them right away because it is going to make a huge difference in the way your makeup looks on a day-to-day basis. The way your foundation looks is so important. If you are not color matching properly, if your foundation is sitting on top of your skin, if you're using too much powder, it's really noticeable that you have makeup on. It's one of the first things that people will notice when they look at you and when they're talking to you. So if you are in a professional job or really just in any day-to-day situation, I think it's really, really important to have as flawless a foundation as possible. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I am hoping to make this into a series of ways to improve your makeup today, and I will focus on different kinds of makeup. If you have any requests for what you want to see next, definitely leave it in the comments down below and I will do that one next. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up so that more people can see it too, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.